the NGO Academy. My name is Karen Smith, and I will be your host for this session on Building Social Capital, Part 1. And just a reminder that building social capital is one of the core competencies of effective advocacy. Now, in this session, we'll go over the basic assumptions being used. We'll look at what is social capital, where does social capital come from, what are the three key elements of relationships that yield social capital, what are the two main forms of social capital, and we're going to take a quick look at a social capital matrix that allows us to intentionally build social capital. Now, the basic assumptions. Social networks matter. Now, if that's not obvious to some of our older folks, all we have to do is look at all of the social networking that is possible through the internet today, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, YouTube, all of the different subcultures that are created. It is a very natural thing for people to do, because social networks matter to the human being. Now, at the core of social capital is trust. Social capital is the developing and maintaining of relationships that allows people to work together. Social capital is, in some ways, just a way for us to give a name to something that we do or something that we automatically do. As mentioned before, we value networks. We value our families and our groups, our classes, our colleagues. But what we're doing by clarifying what social capital is it's giving us a more objective understanding of what is going on, some of the elements that we naturally do, but so that we can begin to intentionally do some of these things. So again, social capital is the developing social capital is the developing and maintaining of relationships that allow people to work together. Social capital is what kind of gets stored up in our relationships that allows us to share the resources in order that we can address opportunities and issues. Social capital is what is called upon when we depend on each other to get things done. It's an invisible, it's an intangible, but it's important. Just as trust is one of those intangibles, it's another way of looking at trust. By being trusting, what that effectively does is it gives us social capital. If we have social capital with somebody, we're able to call upon and depend upon other people to get things done. And so what is important is when we are doing this in the community level, if we can call upon other organizations or other groups of people, that means we have built sufficient social capital at that public level that we can still call upon other groups or other people to get things done. Now, intentional building of social capital is therefore a leadership competency. It's something that we do because we have a mission or a purpose in mind. Intentionally doing something does not automatically make anything devious. What it means is that it is, putting it in plain English, that if we intentionally become a trustworthy person, somebody who is authentic, somebody who is honest, somebody who's reliable, and is a person of integrity, these are good things. Intentionally building our character naturally allows us to build social capital. And in that sense, it's a leadership competency. And those people who are authentic, who are honest, who are reliable, who are people of integrity are the people who naturally become recognized as leaders. And they're the ones that others are willing to follow and step behind on issues that we know that they have capacity and expertise in. In other words, the intentional building of social capital pays off. But where does social capital come from? When we look at the public level, it comes from networks that exist between us. It varies according to the networks and the character of the networks. And some social capital is strong and large, some is smaller and weaker. But in the end, what it is, it's built on trust, and that trust develops strengths and ties that are durable. Trust, reciprocity, and durability are the three key elements of relationships that yield social capital. Now, there are two main forms of social capital. First of all, there's bonding. That is social capital which is formed in closely knit groups and between friends. Bridging is the second social capital, and it's formed between diverse groups and acquaintances, and is oftentimes more difficult to build. Now let's just take another look at these types of social capital in another matrix or a framework here. We can say that you've got public regarding or private regarding, and oftentimes the public are the more formal and the private are more informal. Now oftentimes also the public allow us to bridge across differences, and again the private tends to be the bonding which occurs amongst those who are similar, whether we have similar families, similar ethnic groups, similar cultures, similar languages. But again, I just want to point out here that those bridging, while they cut across differences, one of the ways in which they go from the weak to the more strong is as we dig into those relationships, we begin to realize that in fact we have at different levels there are many similarities, and that we are able to bond in terms of, while we perhaps may be different, there may be differences across cultures. Perhaps we can recognize that there are many similarities amongst women of different cultures, and that perhaps those similarities are even more real and more relevant to many of the issues that we deal with than are our differences. So we've got this constant shifting and changing of awareness of the different levels of bridging or bonding, of weak or strong ties. And the strong ties are those which enable us to deal with the more, oftentimes the deeper or more personal issues that we often deal with, either health issues or marriage or family challenges and problems. Now, here what we're going to look at just very quickly before we close out this very short segment on building social capital, part one, is that, and the value of looking at this matrix is that when we are endeavoring to do something intentional and to lead a group of people, or to lead a community, or to lead a social organization, sometimes what we need to do is we're endeavoring to consciously build social capital. We need to be aware of the ways in which we can do this. So this matrix here just outlines this and gives us a bit of a sense of the ways in which we can build social capital. There are social capital, there's low levels of social capital, and we can deal with such things as food. And the low levels might be done at large group level, block party, or at personal levels. We can invite another person to a restaurant or out for a cup of coffee. We can move across into higher areas of trust where we share something more relevant to our personal lives at the individual level, or we can do this in a public environment where around the table of a board perhaps, or a larger group, an organizational meeting, we can do that at this larger level. I would recommend that you come back and take a closer look at some of these points and sit down with some in your community and consider some of the ways that, and brainstorm about some of these areas, because looking at this matrix can give you some kind of an idea of how to build social capital within your community at local levels, private levels, and in public levels. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us at the NGO Academy on this Building Social Capital Part 1. I invite you to come back and join us for other sessions. Have a good day.